Welcome to the Retro Daisy Hexagon Pullover.
I just wanted to come in first and show you the finished project. I've had so much fun with the Retro Daisy Square Hexagon Pullover. It's oversized, as you can see, but I like clothes that are just easy to live in, and it's going to look good with your slim-legged bottoms, jeggings, or straight-legged jeans. So it's going to be fun. You can dress it up if you want, but I just live a very casual life. I love the 3/4 length sleeves, and notice the ribbing, and then I did decorative top stitching. I want to talk to you a few minutes about hexagon, cardigans, and pullovers before we get started. Hexagon cardigans and pullovers. You know, once you go down the hexy rabbit hole, we may never see you again. That happened to me about 10 years ago. I got hooked on hexagon cardigans and pullovers. But one thing happened even with my first one was it didn't quite fit right. It was very ill-fitting, and I wanted to come up with a way where it fit my body correctly. What was happening is I was getting this in the back, and on every one of them, it would stick out right here. It didn't matter what length that I made it, it stuck out. I tried and tried. There was a lot of frogging along the way. I guess that's better than tears. There was a lot of bulk under the armpits, and I didn't like how that felt as I wore it. It was like, you know, a wing was trying to sprout out under there or something. I kept trying and trying, and I came up with a way, and you'll see my beginning is a little bit different. If you've done any hexagon cardigans before, the way I start mine is different from anybody's that I've ever seen. Someone else may have come up with a solution that worked also, but I'm just showing you a solution to the problem that I had with my hexagon cardigans and pullovers. I'm going to take just a moment to talk to you about the hexy cardigans and pullovers before we get started on this one, because I'm not going to assume that all of my subscribers even have ever made a hexagon cardigan. So if you have already made one, and maybe you're a master at it and you don't want to listen to this, then you want to fast forward. But at the same time, my solution may be something that you can help someone else with on down the road. You know, hexagon cardigans and pullovers, it doesn't matter which one. They consist of two hexagon halves. And once they're completed, then you fold them to make an L, and we'll show you how to do that when we get there. And then they are joined. For the cardigan, they're joined just in the back. And then even your front opening can be done different ways. You can have buttons, you can have a collar, you can have a shawl collar, you can have, if you can think of it, you can do it to this basic hexagon cardigan or pullover body. That silhouette can have numerous embellishments to it. There are two common ways to join the two hexagon halves. The one common way is to in the back and or the front to put just vertical rows of the same stitch or decorative stitches that measure the width of your neck. You need to have that space in the back. If you're going to make a cardigan, you need to have that space back there so that your neck can be comfortable. I have seen patterns where they just take the two
Hexagons.
and just join them and don't leave an opening for the neck, and it's just in a V back there. I've made that. The first one I made was like that. It was uncomfortable on my neck. So that was the first modification that I made. I usually put two vertical rows of stitching on each half of my hexagons and when I'm joining it in the back, and then I put one more row of continuous join in double crochet to join the two together. So there ends up being 5 rows, which is about 4.5 to 5 inches for me. And that's about what my neck is from side to side. What would that be? The diameter of my neck. Okay. Another common way that you see that the hexies are joined is the way that we're going to do on this pullover, is where you put an inset of some sort. Sometimes it's a granny square. It could be any square that has been joined together, multiple squares joined together. I could have just as easily done this in the front and then did the vertical stripes in the back. And then this would have been a reversible pullover. That may be the way you want to go. But I put the insets in the front and the back on this one so that both of my sides are the same. The next thing about hexie cardigans is that they're easily made to measure. In my pattern or in my demo, I'm not going to tell you that for a large you need 21 rows. And for an extra large, you need 25 rows or 32 or whatever it is. Because everyone's stitch height is different. Even if you're using this exact same yarn that I'm using, the exact size of crochet hook, because our stitching method all vary, yours will be different from mine. You know, I can't pick up a piece that you've started and finish it for you and it look the same. The stitches will not be the same. I can't tell you how many rows will absolutely be any certain size. So I'm going to help you learn how to make a garment that's made to measure. Hexagons, you can definitely make them to measure. Now this one obviously is oversized. And I did that on purpose to be a really casual type of garment. Fun. And also in the wintertime, if I wanted to put a t-shirt and cami or something to make this a little warmer, I can, because it's already loose. No one's going to know what's underneath there. And that's a blessing, because made to measure. Every garment that we make, a silhouette to fit our body, can be made to measure. Once you learn how to do made to measure garments, you're going to love crocheting garments. Since cardies and hexagon cardies and pullovers are made to measure and easy to do, what measurements do you need to take? Well, you're going to be surprised. The first one that I want you to take is the measurement of your arm at its widest point. Because I do a technique, and I've seen other people do this. It's not anything I dreamed up on my own. Whenever our hexagon side measures the circumference of what we want our sleeve to be,
we will join the hexagon at the shoulder.
And perhaps you're thinking, oh, but that won't be wide enough to go around my hips or my waist or my chest. Don't worry, we can still add more rows. And I've added 2 more rows. Let me see if I can get up there where you can see it. Once my shoulder seam was joined right here, then I added 2 more rows in order to accommodate, and it's done on both hexies. So it accommodates some of the fullness that I wanted. But you can see this is oversized. It's oversized about 6 inches. It's a little more oversized than I like, but it's still a fun garment, and I'll still continue to wear it. So that's why we start with the arm measurement first, because that's the first thing that we are going to stitch up, and then this part will not
receive stitches until the embellishing.
We can still add rows to add width, as well as when we go all the way around those 3 remaining sides, that it also adds length. So it's going to add width and length. The next measurement that we need is the chest at the widest point. And then from there, you need to add 2 inches to each side to give you the ease of movement. You know, whenever we move our arms forward, we've got to have that extra
width in the back to
have it lay nicely across your chest and not be too binding. Also, if you don't give yourself a little bit of ease, then your armpit part comes up too high and then it is definitely uncomfortable. So it needs to be out from the body a little bit.
measure
Your chest at its widest point. Then the next measurement is how long do you want it to come down? And I measure that from the shoulder seam. In fact, I kind of wait. I predetermine, okay, I want this to be a cropped cardigan, or I want this to be like a Letterman jacket, so I want it to come just below my waist, or I want it to be tunic length. For that matter, you could go 3/4 length, like a 3/4 length coat just above the knee, and you could probably go all the way. I've never met all the way to the floor or to the top of the ankle. I have never made one that long, but I have definitely made one to the knees. So decide what length that you're going to go, because that will determine whether or not we need the measurement of the hip at the widest point. And I'm going to have a little worksheet for you that shows you where to measure, and a little side piece for you to put your actual measurements. And then from there is a calculation for if you want it to be regular fit plus
2 to 3 inches.
If you want it oversized or just roomy, there are some different calculations for you to decide in advance which way you want to go. And also, after you decide that, you can actually take your measuring tape, I don't have one here, and make a circle and put it on you with it like a hula hoop. You're in it, and then test it and go, well, do I want it 54 inches or do I want it 52? And so you can play with it that way before you get started, because those measurements will determine how big your hexagon is before you do the rest to it.
And of course, you can always try on your hexie.
Another thing that we consider on that measurement is this inset. These are the small retro daisies, so they're approximately 5 inches. So you have to allow for that. So whenever you're measuring your chest and determining how wide you want your hexie to be there at the chest, you're going to consider the 2.5 inches of half of a daisy square on that hexagon. So we're still imagining that our midpoint of our hexagon is right here, okay, right in the middle of that daisy. So you can see that mine, of course, ends here. All right, so as I said, I have a worksheet that's coming up. Just as a side note, hexagon cardi can be made in any stitch that can be done in the round and have a multiple that 6 works with. I don't know of one that doesn't, but some that come to mind. Of course, we're going to be doing the solid, a solid hexagon with double crochet. Yes, you could do half double crochet, single crochet. In fact, I've got a picture coming up of one of mine that I still wear frequently, and it has combination of double crochet and half double crochet, and it has many color changes, and so the stripes are different widths as a result of the stitch heights. And of course, I know you've seen the granny stitch, the 3 double crochets in 1 chain space. done in a hexagon for the cardies. But another one that's really beautiful that I've seen, and there are several of those also on YouTube, and that's the Bavarian stitch,
which is considered an intermediate to advanced stitch.
Even this whole sweater, this is kind of with all of the different embellishments and the inset, I would say this is intermediate level also. And given the fact that even the Daisy square is interlocking crochet.
Therefore, a basic knowledge of stitches is helpful to complete this garment.
If you're patient with yourself, you can do it. The only way you grow in crochet is continue to challenge yourself with new concepts. The things that you will learn whenever you complete this garment. And I'm going to stand up and point some of those out. First of all, I've already mentioned that it is a solid hexagon. Now I have used a striping yarn, the Red Heart Polo, so that I get the various colors without having to weave in a lot of ends. And I like to use striping yarn in hexagon cardigans if I'm wanting multiple colors, but I don't always do that. The other one I was talking to you about that I wear a lot with the varying stitch heights and the stripes, I changed those colors and got to choose my own color palette. Another thing, of course, I mentioned, it's the Daisy square is a 5-inch Daisy square, and it's a separate tutorial.
I'll put a link to the Daisy square video in the description box.
Another thing that you will get to experience again is a different type of continuous join, and that's the one that I did here on the shoulder. But sometimes, speaking of that join, sometimes a threaded yarn needle join is the best join for what you're doing. And that's what I did whenever I stitched my Daisy squares together and then stitched them to the garment. I used the threaded, yarn threaded needle. The other thing that you will learn in doing this hexagon sweater, if you haven't ever done it before, you will learn ribbing. My trims are ribbing, both the trim on the bottom and the one on the sleeve. Let me see if I can move this down a little bit. Oh, let me just pull it up. This trim on the bottom is open with a slit for just a decorative edge. So I just thought I would update my pullover with that look, because things like companies like Lululemon, Under Armour, they had that in their sweatshirts and even yoga shirts, different things like that. That ribbing on the bottom was not connected. Also on my sleeves, I have ribbing, but it's not a ribbing that's tight like you might want on your wrist. I just made it the same size as the sleeve, just more or less for a decorative effect and a different texture in the sweater. And then you've got your mock turtle that's also made with ribbing, and the thing that you will learn is how to vary your stitch heights in order to come around corners and so that it lays flat. It's not sticking up. So that's another technique that you will learn. So those are the things that we are about to learn as we begin our Retro Daisy Hexagon Pullover.
What follows is your body measurement chart. You may take a screenshot and print it directly off your phone, or you may go to my Facebook page, my Crochet Obsession, and go to the files for a PDF. In order to complete a hexagon sweater, pullover sweater, or cardigan, you need 2 hexagons. Like most crochet things, we're going to begin with a slip knot on our hook. And I'm going to make this tutorial for beginners. I'm not going to do the double slip ring, which I would normally do, but for a beginner, I think it's easier to just go ahead and chain 4. and join to the first chain in order to form a ring. Adjust your ring a little bit because you're going to have to go back into it. And you will be crocheting over the yarn end. Chain up 5. And then double crochet into the ring. Into the ring. Make sure that you are inside the ring and not into one of the stitches. And double crochet. Chain 2. And double crochet again. You can see, any of you that have ever made a hexagon before, you can see that my first row is different than any other one that I have ever come across. And chain 2 and double crochet again. Chain 2, double crochet again. Chain 2, double crochet again. Chain 2, double crochet. Let's count our sections. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We didn't need that last double crochet. We are going to be joining to our chain up. We are going to, from where that chain begins, we're going to go 1, 2, and 3 into that third chain. Insert your hook into both loops. I got mine a little tight. I have a tendency to do that with my chains. There we go. Get it through both loops and pull a loop through and through the other stitch that was on the hook. All right. So you should have 6 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a hexagon. And now, insert your hook into your first chain space and pull up a loop. And chain 2. Yarn over, insert your hook into the chain space again and pull up a loop and double crochet. Now you're going to chain 2. We are forming a corner. Since this hexagon is a solid hexagon, I'm not doing the granny stitches, we only put 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 double crochet to form a corner. Okay, so this is our first hexagon corner. And into the next space, no chain in between, but into the next space, we're going to double crochet, and again a double crochet, chain 2, and 2 double crochet. Repeat, 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 double crochet. Repeat again into the next chain space. Double crochet 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochet. Repeat again into your next chain space. And we're coming into the last one. We're going to slip stitch into the top of the first chain up. So count 1, 2, 3, and that's where you insert your hook, pull up a loop, and slip stitch to join.
Round 2 is complete.
And this is what your work looks like. Notice also that it is laying flat.
Let's begin round 3. I recommend chaining 1 before you insert your hook into the chain space for your corner. I didn't do it here, but in later rounds I found it was necessary so I could get into that stitch whenever I came back to it to join. Continue the pattern repeat for this round and slip stitch to join at the end of the round. You should have 8 stitches in each side of the hexagon, not including the chains. Now, and for the remainder of your hexagon, you should always have an even number of stitches on each side of the hexagon. It's important to count the stitches on each side of your hexagon. You should have 8 stitches in each side of this round. It's easy to miss that stitch where you chained up in the beginning into the corner, and as I mentioned before, I'm going to begin in the following rounds to chain 1 before I go into that corner.
So tight. And once again, you will slip stitch into the top of that chain up stitch that counts as your first double crochet, pull through a loop, and slip stitch to join. Let's look at our work. It is still laying flat, and we are at 1, 2, 3. Row 3, not counting our the chain ring. We're on row 3. We want to continue this pattern repeat until row 5. On row 5, we're going to chain, that's where we're going to begin to modify our corners somewhat.
Continue this pattern repeat, increasing by 4 stitches in each row, and I will meet up with you again at row 5.
I'm at my 5th row, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm about to begin row 5. I have slip stitched to join and inserted my hook into the chain space. And just like all of the other rows, we're going to chain 2 here, plus 1, that's our chain space for the corner, and then go right into a double crochet. On this 5th round, our corners are going to be double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. and then into that first stitch and into the top of every stitch across the row, across this 1/6 of our hexagon. And here we are at the corner. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. And that is going to be your pattern repeat for this 5th row. Now, after the 5th row, every 3 rows from now on to for the rest of the hexagon, you will use this alternative corner on this row, and then after this, every 3rd row. So the next row you're going to use this is going to be 8, and then 11, and then 14. And then on the rows in between, you're going to have 2 double crochet and chain 2. All right, so continue this pattern repeat. I will meet up with you at the end of this round so that we can begin back to our regular stitch pattern, but I just want to start you out on it so you don't forget. And here we are at the end of row 5. Now you can see it is beginning to waffle a little bit, and that's fine. It's supposed to do that. For some reason, hexagons do that. Anyway, I just love these colors. I keep staring at this. I love them. This is the Red Heart Polo Stripe, and I like striped yarn for the hexagon sweaters. Whether it doesn't matter if you're doing the granny stitch or the solid or any of the other stitches. Let's look at our hexagon and make sure how it's going to be laying. You remember on our hexagon you take 2 corners that are side by side and you fold the hexagon and it makes an L. Okay, and this is looking good. It's going to be more of an L as we get it made, but this is the way it's supposed to look. Sometimes the hexagons have a tendency to start flaring, and they look more like an A is what they remind me of rather than an L, and that's not what we want. Those are the ones that, in my experience, those are the ones that don't hang correctly whenever you get finished. So we've got a good, really nice, almost perfect 90-degree angle here and at the armpit, and that's what we want. I want to count these stitches, make sure that we still have an even number of stitches. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. On this row 5, you should have 14 stitches. And I suggest that in every section, while you're crocheting your hexie, that on every side, all 6 sides, that you count every single time. That just will prevent the occurrence of you having to frog out an entire round and do it over again. So from now on, for the rest of the hexagons, every 3rd row, so you're going to do 2 more rows, and these next 2 rows are going to have the 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. And then the 3rd row will be in the corners 1 double crochet, chain 1, 1 double crochet. Now I'm going to put a stitch marker in this round so to remind me where it was, so I'll be sure and catch when I'm at my 3 rows up that I'm supposed to change to that corner modification again. Okay, and I've put my stitch marker in, and now we're ready to begin our next round. we're going to, after we have slip stitched to join that round, we're going to insert our hook into that chain space, pull up a loop, and chain 2. Double crochet, chain 2 again, and double crochet. And be sure and get into that first double crochet. It looks like a P. All the way across. And because you're adding 2 stitches on each end of this round, you should have 18 stitches at the end of this row. Repeat this pattern, and in 3 rows from now, I'm going to come back just to remind us that we're going to do the alternative corner. So I will see you then on row 8. I wanted to give you a full view before we proceed with, this is my row 5, 6, 7, I'm coming into 8. So in row 8 is where I will make my modified corner, but I wanted you to see again from a bird's eye view how nice and crisp the corners are at this point of the development, that you know, they look really nice and sharp. We've still got our nice, almost perfect right angle there. This hexagon sweater is developing, growing, just like he's supposed to. So this is my stitch marker again. So this next row is row number 8. But let's count our stitches. And I'm hoping that you are counting your stitches as you create your sides to your hexagon to make sure that you have all of your stitches. We should have, I believe, 22 here. I don't want to write on my, so it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22. 22. And I counted my other rounds as I did it. So let's proceed. Now I've started chaining 1 to go into that corner space. That's optional. You can or you don't have to, either way. But you need to get into the chain space regardless of whether you chain 1 to get over there or just jump over there. And slip stitch, pull up a loop and slip stitch, and then chain 2. And that counts as a double crochet. Chain 1 more. This is our modified corner. So you have then a double crochet on the other side. That chain up 2 counted as a double crochet, and then we added 1 more chain for our chain space. Back into our first stitch of that round. Don't forget that first one sometimes is hiding all the way around. Now in this round, this row, we will have only 24 stitches because we're just adding 1 stitch on each end to each side of the hexagon. So we're adding, that's a total of 2 stitches. So we should have 24 at the end of this. Well, I may not get any stitches in. I keep losing my yarn. Speaking of the stitch marker, if you don't have a stitch marker with some kind of a dangle, you can use just a piece of yarn that you just either tie on, or I usually just loop it around and then put the ends through the loop and it's attached that way. You want it where you can remove it quickly to move on to your next thing. A safety pin works. I've seen some people use also a paper clip. Anything that you can clip on there and remove it. Just these bulb pins, I have these left over from my embroidery and slow stitching. And so I use those without a dangle sometimes, because I bought some of these, and I thought they were actual stitch markers, but they're really not, because they don't have a little clip on them. All right, let's count our stitches here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, and 24. Right on target. So on this round, now I'm going to put in my stitch marker where we began this round, and then 3 rows up from here, I will do this modified corner again. This is going to be your pattern repeat for the entire sweater. Hexagon, excuse me. This is your pattern repeat for the entire hexagon. You will continue in this manner until the sides of your hexagon reach the length that you predetermined by working the body measurement chart that you want your sleeve to be. Once this length is achieved, we will join at the shoulder seam. Continue to build your hexagon with the regular corners of 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 double crochet, and a double crochet in every stitch from the previous row. Every 3rd row, you will stitch your modified corner of 1 double crochet, chain 1, and 1 double crochet, followed by 1 double crochet in every stitch from the previous row. Continue in this manner until you have achieved your desired length of your sleeve. I have now arrived at the place in my hexagon half that the sides of my hexagon are the length that I predetermined that I wanted the circumference of my sleeve to be. It is at this point that I will be joining the sleeve together at the shoulder. We needn't be concerned with the width or the length of our hexagon at this time. Once we join the sleeve at the shoulder seam, then we will be able to continue to add rows along the body of the hexagon, along the front and the bottom and the back, in order to achieve the width and length that we desire. You will want to refer to your body measurement chart throughout the remainder of building your hexagon cardigan. And now we will proceed with joining at the shoulder seam. At the shoulder seam, so that our sleeve does not continue to get larger and larger and larger. Now this is a style decision, a design decision. You may want to have a hexagon that has the really large sleeves. That may be what you're going for. If so, then you need to just continue to put your rounds all the way around your hexagon until you get your sleeve the measurement that you want. I have gotten my sleeve to a measurement of 16. At the widest point, my arm, at its widest, it has a diameter of 12 inches. So I'm adding 4 inches to it to allow for ease of movement with the sleeve. Now, I could have gone at something closer to 12, but it would have been much closer fitted garment. Another thing that is concerning, if you make the diameter of the sleeve closer to the size of your arm, then you run into, you may have some tightness and binding up around your armpit, and that can be very uncomfortable. So to avoid that discomfort under the armpit is one of the additional reasons why you add 3 or 4 inches to your measurement of your arm to get the right size for your sleeve. To join at the shoulder seam, we're going to join very similar to the way that we have joined our squares in previous videos. All right, so now we're getting in closer to our, let's see if I can get this up a little bit more. Okay, we're getting in closer to where our stitches can be so that you can see them. If you've seen any of my other videos where I do the continuous join, that is exactly what we're doing on this shoulder seam. I'm going to come in and this row though, where we add the stitches, will still be in double crochets, and they will be solid double crochets all the way from the end here to back to the neck, the top of the shoulder at the neck. Okay, notice also, I hope you noticed whenever the camera was a little bit higher, that our hexagon, by using that alternative corner treatment every 3rd row after the 5th one, that our corners are nice and crisp. The body of our hexagon stays nice and straight and parallel, does not flare out here and look more like an A than an L. It should look like an L. Okay, so we're at our shoulder seam, and I just begin my shoulder seam right there where the row joins up to the beginning of the row, where the end of the row and the beginning of the row come together. All right. Now, the first stitch that I do, I actually go into that next chain because I want to get this first stitch very much in line so that the edge of this sleeve will be straight whenever I'm done. All right, and we need to get the work. For me, as a right hand dominant person, I'm going to get my stitches on the right hand side, and there's my yarn. Okay, now then, from that stitch where we stitch one more time into the next chain stitch in that corner, you're going to double crochet into that same chain stitch on the other side of the shoulder of the sleeve. Okay, and I'm going in both loops there, pulling up a loop. Oops, I forgot to yarn over. Going in, and I'm going into the front. I'm going into the front of the stitch. That's important because it looks different if you go the other way. The decision to make here is if you're going to go into the front from the first stitch, then make all of the stitches the same. Okay, so now we have our 3 loops on the hook, pull through 2 and yarn over and pull through 2, and we've got our join. Now let's lay it down and take a peek at it and make sure it's straight. You want that to be able, whenever it's completely joined, that the join itself is seamless. It just looks like another row of your hexagon. That's what we're going for. All right, now then, we have a loop here that we are going to then begin to double crochet our next stitch. Let me get that adjusted. I turned it around and my stitch opened up a little bit. All right, there we go. Now then, go ahead and from this stitch, you want to come into, from that, you're in the corner, you want to come in from the top of the next stitch and pull up this loop. Once you get this going, it's easy. It's getting it started that is a little bit fidgety. And then after that, it all goes well. Okay, and then your next stitch is into the top of the next, the other side of your hexagon. Double crochet. You may want to kind of pinch the stitch together a little bit by holding the two rows of your hexagon so that that stitch doesn't open up. They have a tendency to do that. Okay, now with that loop, pull up that loop a little bit, and then with your non-dominant hand, hold that loop, insert the hook in the top of the next stitch, pull through that loop. Now you want this to be loose, and so that this join doesn't gather up, cinch up. And then yarn over, go into that next stitch on the other side of your garment. You've got 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Loosen up that loop. Insert your hook into the front of the other side of your hexagon garment. Yarn over and insert the hook into the opposite side of your hexagon garment. You have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Let me pull my yarn up a little bit, pull out some yarn. And I know this dark purple, it's called amethyst. It's a red heart amethyst, but I wanted to change my yarn and bring in a little less color on this particular hexagon. I'm still going to put the retro daisies insert in them, but I'm going to do it different from the pullover. Again, we're pulling through that loop and then gently adding our double crochet, going into the other side of our hexagon garment. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Pull up that loop a little bit, hold it with your non-dominant hand, slip your hook into the top of the other side of your hexagon garment, yarn over, insert the hook into the top of the opposite side of your hexagon at the shoulder, pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops. You have another loop. And I bet you remember, into the top of the next stitch, pull through that loop, and you know, have the tension be just right, not too tight, not too loose. Just make sure it's not too tight for sure, or it will bunch up there and not be a smooth look. And that's your stitch pattern all the way up to the neck. Now when we get up to the neck, there's a little bit different thing that we do there. So if you're crocheting faster than I am, which that's fine. I'm trying to demonstrate. Wait for me there, because we're going to do some stitches so that they will be in line, so that we can just turn the corner there and then make our rounds to go to extend the body of our hexagon. So if you get there, wait for me. I'm going to go ahead and stitch this, join this together, and for demonstration purposes, but I'm not necessarily going to talk. I'm just going to, it'll be show and not tell. Take a moment and look at this join. I want to make sure, yeah, that's pretty straight. I like it. The stitch here opened up just a bit, but I can live with that. But you see, the join is virtually seamless. The stitches look the same. The only difference is you have that little wrap where the loop comes around to attach it, but I don't mind that. To me, it's a decorative element. And there are actually some things that if you were really getting funky and more freestyle with your cardigan, there's something you could do with that that would just be totally awesome, but we will save that for a future episode. All right. And I'm going to continue then with that same process all the way to the neck. But I won't bore you with trivial banter from my life or the weather. I cannot always talk and crochet at the same time. So I'm just going to crochet and demonstrate this join. One little tidbit, a trivia, I guess I'm noticing something that I'm doing that actually was one of the earliest crochet movements. I'm not saying it's a technique, but the way I'm holding my hook and then with my non-dominant hand putting the yarn over the hook. That was the earliest way that crochet was performed, because men were making fishing nets with hemp and a large diameter rope. And so and also the hooks were very large. Generally they were made out of either bone or wood, and they were carved out. But because the yarn that they were using was so heavy, hemp and rope, and even the hemp, I'm not referring to the hemp as we can buy it today necessarily, that we use in garments and purses, and it was a larger diameter than that, like a bulky 5, 6, or even larger. So it was impossible to move the hook like this and get that loop because of the weight of the rope. So originally it was yarn over with the non-dominant hand. And I'm going to imagine that they had gloves on to save their hands. But eventually, as I understand it in the history and research that I've done, just as a side note, I wrote a paper on this very topic whenever I was at university. And then when women were able to, they began to help their husbands, their spouses, and they would start making the fishnets, especially the very small ones for maybe seining minnows for bait. They started making smaller fishnets and with smaller diameter rope and hemp. And then that's how crochet migrated, so to speak, into the rest of life. And then the common women eventually were able to crochet beautiful lace ruffs and other types of lace for the aristocracy, and that was a source of income for them. But originally, to the best we can tell historically, crochet began with men making fishing nets. So I noticed that I was doing that, but it's mostly that's just the movement that kind of works with the way I'm having to hold my crochet fabric. Now, don't get nervous if you're seeing that, oh my goodness, I have more crochet fabric over here than this one. It's okay, because we're going to come right around and create another row, and that's how we're going to extend the body of our hexagon sweater. So that's the way it's supposed to look. Okay. Now is where things begin to get a little bit different, but nonetheless, we're still going to take this loop and put it into this next stitch and yarn over and go into the chain, exactly as if it were the top of a standing stitch. It is a stitch, it's just not a standing stitch. And pull up a loop and still complete your double crochet. take that loop and go into the next stitch, which is, it's actually a chain. Into that, pull through the loop, yarn over. Let me get this garment where we can see what we're doing. Our goal in these stitches is when we make this turn, this garment will remain straight as we make this turn. Now this stitch is going to come up to begin the next row, and then this is going to, as we come around, then we will be joining right here to complete our row on this next round. But we need to make sure that before we do this next stitch that it's pretty close to being, and the way I've got mine a little bit tight, so I'm going to give it a little bit more room. You don't want to choke this stitch. But now we're going to begin with a chain up of 2 here. And make it gentle. This first one, don't pinch that stitch. I see newcomers to crochet, they'll get to right here, and then they'll pull this down real tight. Well, when you do that, that's whenever it cinches up this, and we're trying to avoid that here. You know what? I think I'm going to try putting one more stitch. You use your own judgment here. I'm going to come up into that first chain and put one more stitch and see if that isn't better for me. And every garment, when you get to this place, if you're doing this type of a shoulder join, you're going to have to use your own judgment with it. Now, another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check my tension for sure. And I'm going to chain 1. And then I'm going to come back into that corner. I'm going to go into this first stitch though. And I'm going to see if that doesn't give me a real straight pass there. Let's see what we've got. That's better. And stitches will be into this, and they will be into this whenever we come back around, and that's going to be just fine. Okay? So tighten the tension just a bit here. Now, chain 2, and that will count as a double crochet. And then yarn over for your next double crochet, but that double crochet is going to go into this loop of the double crochet that's actually horizontal, perpendicular to the stitch that we're putting in. So a double crochet. And then the next double crochet goes into the top of the next stitch. Let's put a couple of more double crochet, and then we'll go back and look at this and see if we need I need another one. I can tell by looking at it. All right, we're going to do the exact same thing. You have another loop in that double crochet. It's right there. That's perpendicular to the stitch you're putting in. Go into that one loop. It's like a back bump. And put in a double crochet. And that way this is going to be, yeah, that's what I want. Then double crochet into the next stitch. And into the next stitch. You're going to double crochet all the way around your garment to keep adding rounds, because now you're adding width to your chest and the hip area on your hexagon garment. And you will continue to add as many rounds as you need in order to achieve at least that same chest measurement that we took at the beginning. I take my chest measurement and add 4 to 6 inches, depending on what kind of fit that you want. If you want more of an oversized fit, you want to add 6 inches. But remember, you're going to split that number in half. If I choose that I want my garment oversized and I'm going to add 6 inches to my chest measurement, it's 3 inches on this side and 3 inches on the other hexagon. And then minus half the width of your inset if you happen to be adding some square inset to the join of your hexagon halves. Okay? Because you're going to do all of these measurements and stitches on both of your hexagon garments. Even on the other garment, you're going to do the same join on the shoulder. On your other garment, you're also going to make the same number of rounds to add width to your chest measurement as you do on this one. Now, perhaps you're thinking, oh, well, I have 6 inches. I'm going to need it at the bottom. I'm going to need my hexagon 6 inches. And I only need 4 inches for the chest, which is 2 on each side, and that would be 3 inches on each side on the bottom. Don't worry about that right now, because we're going to be adding rows, unless you're doing a cropped hexagon sweater. We're going to add rows in order to make it come over our hips for a little bit longer of a jacket, maybe like a blazer, or even longer. I mean, it could be tunic length. But we will talk about how we're going to add rows to this part of the garment to make it longer, and also some increases so we'll have more ease on the hip. Do not concern yourself with the added width that you may need to ease over the hip area. We will address that in the next step. Continue to add your rows to have the correct width for the chest area at this time. So you continue along with the same stitch, the double crochets all the way down, and even your corner treatments are exactly the same. My measurement ended up at a corner where I've got my 1 double crochet, chain 1 double crochet. But yours may not have, but you still continue the same pattern. In fact, I need to get my stitch marker, and I don't know where it is. It probably fell on the floor somewhere. But I need to put my stitch marker in here because, oh, it's up here. It's in the other part of my garment. All right, here we go. To remind me that I'm going to go back to my regular stitch here. All right. Now, one thing that you can begin to notice, though, as you start this way, because what has happened on our hexagon garment, once it's folded, the corners begin to behave differently. So one thing that you might need to be aware of is pay attention to these corners. If they seem to start bulbing out and not being almost 90 degrees, they kind of start a bulb, then even in your 2 double crochet corners, it's okay to just put 1 chain. And that will prevent that bulbing out from happening. Because, like I said, once the hexagon is folded, then the corners behave a little bit differently. So you use your own judgment, and if you see it happening, then only put 1 chain there. Now, in the next row, you may want to go back then to 2 chains. There again, it's a judgment call based on your hook size, the type of yarn you're using, how you make turns. There's a lot of variables there that without being there sitting right beside you, I can't help you decide. So you're going to have to learn to use your own judgment to make these modifications to make your garment lay the way it needs to lay. Okay, I'm going to leave it with you because we've done, I've already done like 20 rounds, and you've probably done 20 or plus or less, and so you know how to do this. I will come back to you though when we get this join right here so that we can join together and go to the next row. There again, let me say, for some of us, the people that are making like a small or an extra small, this may be as many rounds as you need. You may not need to add more rounds to add width to your chest measurement of your sweater. Continue to refer to your body measurement chart and the calculations that you made before we started this project. After adding all of the rounds to our hexagon that we will be needing before we add our insets of our daisy squares for this particular sweater, we will need to join those together. Now, in part 2 of this hexagon pullover, we will add the additional rows with the ease needed for our hips, and we will join our daisy squares together and attach them to our hexagon before we add our trim of ribbing and address the neck. It is very important to refer to your body measurement chart and the calculations that we made there in order to achieve the correct fit for your hexi, pullover, or cardigan. Proceed to part 2.